We want to welcome you to the Bradley and Mike's sports scene, and this is the second episode, hopefully a long-running series here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative's Channel 18. And of course, with me, is Bradley Hargis. I'm Mike Smith, and I hope that you enjoyed our first program. As of course, we're trying to find our sea legs here, so to start here. But of course, this week, this is number 2. We're going to talk. Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is the regular high school football season, which is set to get underway. We had the Jamboree last week. Unfortunately for Bledsoe County Junior Varsity, lost 7-0 to Sequatchie County Junior Varsity, and lost to Ray County 9-7 on a last-second field goal by the Golden Eagles of Ray County. And of course, everybody knows, 3 words to describe the opener this season: the border rivalry, Bledsoe versus Sequatchie County. And of course, that is the prime rivalry in this valley ever since South Pittsburg and Marion County quit playing each other. And this should bring up a lot of people, especially here. We of course welcome you to go to the game Friday night. If you can't go to the game, you can listen to it on WAT with me and Bradley doing the broadcast. Bradley, what are your thoughts? I know you played in it, you coached in it, you know all about it. What are your thoughts on this border rivalry?
Well, there's nothing like it. I mean, in regards to Sequatchie County and Bledsoe County, it doesn't matter how great the team is when that game happens. It's always a good game. I mean, there's been a few lopsided victories in the past, but the vast majority of them, and at least in the last 15 years or so, have been very, very close. And they just come out and play as hard as they can. I mean, that's just one thing about it. Yeah, those are brought by the coaches. We can probably find those at the gift stand gift shop down there at the field when we play our first home opener. But the Bledsoe County Sequatchie County rivalry is like no other. I mean, we played it at the end of the season, and then there were so many things, extracurricular activities that were happening around Halloween. They decided to move it to the middle of the season, and then we did that for several years, and TWSAA said, well, you know what, now we're going to pick the region schedule, so it's not going to be in the hands of the coaches anymore as far as the region goes. So the only option we had to play Sequatchie and keep that rivalry intact was to play them in the first season, and that can be good. That can be good because every year, regardless of who we're playing the first few games, everyone is looking forward to that Sequatchie County game.
Yeah, generally Sequatchie would be playing South Pittsburg first game of the year, and Bledsoe will be playing somebody else. But this year, of course, it was the only date that was available to play, and to even think about discontinuing this rivalry would be unthinkable. Of course, it was done in early 1980s for 2 years, and people pretty much say, hey, let's bring this rivalry back, and it's been brought back ever since. Of course, the first game was in 1928. Bledsoe won 50-0, and they actually scheduled 2 games, but Sequatchie had to forfeit the second game. And it wasn't until 1949 that Sequatchie County actually scored a win in this series, as far as I can tell. Of course, there may be some things that maybe come up. That was 49-6, and of course, Bledsoe County, of course, the biggest win was back in 1940, 72-0, while the Sequatchie County win, because Bradley is here, and I don't want to hurt his feelings, it was 56-0, I believe, in 2000.
Yeah, that was my senior year, our final game of the season, and we lose to our arch rival 56-0, and that's still a bad taste in our mouth. Even though I've gotten out of high school and done with football, and been working with the youth, with church and everything, and a lot of them from Dunlap. Even actually, I know this is probably going to turn some people off of me, but I even wore a Dunlap shirt down to one of the Dunlap ball games.
That's terrible.
Only because one of the young ladies was selling it for their soccer thing, and Dunlap, and she's part of the youth group. So I went ahead and bought it. And I said, well, since I bought it, I'm going to wear it. But I wore a layer over it so nobody could see it. The only person that knew now, up until now,
something should never be said.
The only person that knew up until now was my friend Willie Mosley. I showed him that I had this Sequatchie shirt on, and I said, do not tell a soul. But it's been so long now, I think I can share that.
The cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Anyway, remember this series has been known for close scores, blowout streaks. memorable plays, bad calls. We have quite a few of those. Remember, and that's in just basically anything that a rivalry could be. And by the way, Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative is actually going to have a tailgate party there Friday night at the field at Dunlap. And if you are there, and if you're listening to us on the radio live, we'd like to invite you down there to get some free grub, so to speak, and that sort of thing. Again, of course. It's almost a guaranteed sellout. You're going to have both stands filled to the rim with fans from both teams, and you look at the origins of this rivalry. Of course, it's now known as the Border Rivalry, but that's more recent. That was a more recent name, and of course the Chief Roaring Eagle Trophy and the Spirit Stick, known as the Stump. And Bradley, you know all about the origin of the Stump, so why don't you tell everybody about that?
For years, we played for a trophy that was literally carved out of a stump. It was turned upside down, and it had a Native American face carved in it. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful trophy. We just called it the Stump. That's what we always, that's what both schools called it, the Stump. So Sequatchie County won it one year, and every year it goes to the winner, and they get that year's bragging rights as part of the rivalry. And I'm not going to speculate as to what happened. I've heard two different stories.
Yeah, I've heard about a dozen of them.
But one of them I do believe, regardless of who did it and when and how, we know that the original Stump, Chief Roaring Eagle Trophy, was burned. It was destroyed. And I'm not going to make any accusations, but we're just going to say that Dunlap had it when it happened. So you can go any direction you want to.
We prefer not to start any fires at this point.
But they've got a new one, and now they put the things beside the trophy that has the little gold plaques that tells the score and the team and the year and all of that. Mm-hmm. So it's still a beautiful trophy, and it's still something that's sought after, even though it's not the original. The kids that are playing now have probably never even heard of the original, because that was several years ago. But there was one before this one, and it was destroyed, and now we have this other one. And I hope that it stays around for a while. I hope nobody ends up accidentally lighting it on fire when it's supposed to be in a school safe lock and key case display. So that's just part of the rivalry, though.
Yeah, of course. Remember, this is a rivalry that really is sort of like I've heard it compared to Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Georgia. That's sort of the big college rivalries, that sort of thing. And of course, I've heard some say they call it the 127 series was one consideration for a name. Hatred in the Hills, clean old-fashioned hate. That's Georgia Tech, of course. Mm-hmm. And of course. Just a number of names, but really, this is truly a border rivalry. 30 miles separate the two contestants, and basically 364 days a year, all is peace and quiet in the valley. And then that one day a year is when both towns choose sides, and it's Happy New Year.
When the football team plays, when the basketball teams play, and the baseball and softball teams play. Not saying there's not a rivalry in volleyball. Not saying there's not a rivalry in soccer. I'm not saying in other sports. But those four in that order are typically the most heated rivalries. Football being the first. I mean, it's just something about it. It's something about football Friday nights. In the fall, you get out there and you get to go, nose to nose with your arch rival, and it's kind of like a brother-sister relationship, kind of like a sibling. 1 week of the year during football season, we can't stand each other. But the other 51 weeks of the year, if anybody says anything across Sequatchie County, the vast majority of Bledsoe will come to their defense. And vice versa. If somebody says, something does cross Bledsoe, Sequatchie County will come to the defense as well. And that's just the way the community is, because the vast majority of people in these two counties are related anyway. In some ways.
The thing about it is that you have to say this about this. If it's the playoffs, you're going to have fans from one school going to come and support the other team. Like Alcoa came to play Sequatchie County. You had a lot of Bledsoe fans come down there to support. And as you said last week during the Jamboree, is that you know, at the end of the season, when they had at the end of the season, you like have South Pittsburgh and Marion County fans will come up there to watch the game. Just you know, maybe they're not fans of either school, but they come up and watch anyway because it's an interesting game. But like I said, Bradley, what is the most memorable game that you were ever witnessed in your life? I mean, what was probably the most memorable? I mean, that's kind of hard to pick. It's like saying, it's like who's your favorite child?
That is hard to pick because there's so many stories that I could tell you about the games and stuff that I was able to play in, you know, or be a part of. But the funny moments and the most memorable moments generally didn't happen on Friday nights. They happened during camp, during the summer, or in practice. And I mean, I could talk for 4 days about that. But they're just, I mean, I guess the most memorable thing to me, if I put it all in a nutshell, was just getting to be able to experience that with some really good friends of mine, whom I'm still friends with today, and just be able to wear the blue and gold on Friday night. I wasn't a premier player. I mean, I was strong as an ox, but I was slow as a slug, so I didn't get much opportunity to be, you know, out on the field very much. But my senior year, the two biggest games of the year was Marion and Sequatchie, and I played the vast majority of those, because the first string tackle hurt his knee and one hurt his ankle in the other. So I was able to play quite a bit of those. And but yeah, it's just the thought of being in the field house with the guys, and before and after the games, and during the practices, and you know, all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see unless you actually played the game and been a part of it. Then you know what goes on behind the scenes. And you know how fun that can be, and you know also know how terrible that can be. I mean, it's a two-edged sword, but there's no way that I can narrow it down to one memory. I mean,
it's just so much.
One of the funniest things, I'll just share this, was we were at Tellico Plains the first year we played Tellico at Tellico.
Yeah.
And we had a friend of mine whose name was Jared. He was the up back on the punt team. And the Tellico Plains defender come through, and instead of, you know, blocking him like you're supposed to, the Tellico Plains guy was running full speed. Jared just drops down like you see something similar on WWE. He just drops down, and that guy hits him, and Jared flips him. The guy goes wham and lands on his back, and it looks like basically what you call a back body drop on WWE. And I mean, the whole sideline cracked up, you know, because they're like, that's not how you block somebody. But when we got over there, I remember Coach Borden say, Jared, what in the world are you doing? And he said, well, I don't know. I'm just trying to stop him. He said, that wasn't blocking. He said, well, he didn't block the punt, did he? So I'm like, well, I guess he's got a point. But yeah, that was one of the funnier times. But most of the interaction with the coaches, Dennis Bagwell, Jim Ward, and Dickie Brown, Hubert Robertson, those four right there, and we had John Bartlett there for a while.
Yeah.
Those four core members, and Dennis Bagwell left, but we still had those three, Brown, Robertson, and Ward, and they were so fun to be around. I mean, if you didn't do anything that you shouldn't be doing, they were fun to be around. Yeah. But if you did something you shouldn't be doing, it wasn't too fun at all.
I think probably a memory, and this was sort of not a sad memory, was in 2011 when Canyon Bourne had passed away, and they were playing the game at Dunlap, and everybody in that crowd, there was no Bledsoe Sequatchie County fans. They were fans who were trying to comfort the parents of Canyon Bourne, and I knew, and his father Robbie Bourne I went to school with, and you know he was and you know they presented him with a card football in memory of that young man. And then he gave a speech which was very moving, and there was not a dry eye, I don't believe, in that stadium. And that was just, you know, that tells you sometimes there was no rivalry in that. Nobody cared who won. Bledsoe won that game, but nobody cared really.
And it wasn't even that week, but I mean, it was the whole entire season. Sequatchie County had a blue number 7 on the back of their helmet. They also, at all their home games, then it wasn't turf, and they would paint a blue 7 on the 7-yard line, you know, to commemorate.
We saw a lot of geese flying with looked in the version number 7, which is sort of a thing. But I think, but two other memories I had was in 1997, the last game played at the old field in Dunlap, where I got a great view of the telephone pole in front of me, and I had to ask, who's doing what? Well, Squatchy won that 21-7, and then in 1999, the first year I did the broadcast. It was the last game of the year, and of course I had Dr. Charles Bounds doing color with me, and that was the first year on their new field, and we beat them 27-7, and that was sort of like this sort of thing. Now, when we come back, we will go to Major League Baseball. We'll talk about baseball a little, and that's Bradley's favorite sport. Baseball. Second to football for baseball, and then of course some other things. As you're watching the Bradley and Mike Sports Scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative Channel 18.
You need a bank that you can depend on. Here at Citizens Tri-County Bank, we have the most dependable staff that you will ever meet. Call in, you will not get an automated attendant, you'll get a person. But on the other side, we have all the technology that anyone would need, from apps to online banking to bill pay. So please come and grow with us as we're about to celebrate our 50th year. We are the only community bank you will ever need.
Come and see the beautiful Sequatchie Valley. And while you're here, visit the Dunlap Mercantile. We have a full line of hats from Resistol, Stetson, Charlie One Horse, American Hat Makers, GG Pip, Greeley hats from the TV show Yellowstone, and a full line of vintage hats. Make sure to check out our hat bar where we can clean, shape, and customize a hat just for you, right here at the Dunlap Mercantile.
At Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter, we're committed to be better. Better prices, better vehicles, a better experience. Your Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter understands that you rely on us to provide you with the highest quality of used vehicles. With over 350 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. So what are you waiting for? Let us show you a better experience with the Jason Lewis Automotive family. Come visit us at Rankin Avenue here in Dunlap or on the web at dunlapsupercenter.com.
All right, we're back. The next segment of our program here is baseball. We're going to talk about Major League Baseball, minor league baseball, just baseball in particular, and of course the Major League Baseball. I know this is Bradley's favorite sport. He used to wear that hat with those eyes on, with those eyes in the
Chattanooga Lookouts.
Yeah, with the eyes was was rather unnerving to wear. But anyway, Bradley, of course, Major League Baseball. What's the situation with the pennant races at this point?
The biggest surprise to me, and to start with the American League, is Baltimore. I mean, they were not pegged to finish, but like third or fourth in the AL East, and they're right now leading over the favored Tampa Bay Devil Rays. I got a 3-game lead on them, by the way. But Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson and those young talent guys they have, I mean, they're tearing it up. And I'm tickled for them. And interestingly enough, the team that is usually on top, the New York Yankees, are in last place in the AL East, 14 games back. Of course, there's still another month and 2 months left this month and in September, and then a couple of weeks in October, I think, before the playoffs start. So there's plenty of time, turn that around. But it's looking like my wife is calling me, and I'm going to have to get on to her. No, I'm just kidding. One of these days I might want her to call me. But anyway, the baseball scene in the AL, it's looking like Baltimore is kind of in control of their own destiny at this point. Then you got Minnesota and Texas who are leading their respective divisions, the Central and the West. But the not really the biggest surprise to me in the National League, but it is surprising not that they are on top, but how well they're doing. And it's my Atlanta Braves. Braves have the best record in baseball right now at 77-42. At one time this season, in the top 10 home run leaders, 6 of them were Atlanta Brave players. Now I think there's only 3 Aussies tied for second. Ozzie Albies is tied for, 10th place. Austin Riley is 6th, and Matt Olson leads the majors with 43, 2 more than Shohei Ohtani. So it's great to see them perform at this caliber they're performing at. And it's not like they went out and spent a gob of money. They let 2 premier players go the last 2 seasons. Season before last, Freddie Freeman went to Albert's beloved Dodgers. Mm-hmm. And then last year, we lost Dansby Swanson to the Chicago Cubs. But Matt Olson has picked up right where Freddie left off, and he's now a fan favorite. It took him a while to gain that kind of trust and favor, but he's there. And of course, Arcia, who took the spot of Swanson, has performed exceptionally well this year too. I mean, he has a good glove. He's got a good pop in his bat. So I look for Atlanta. If they can just keep pouring on the steam, I think they'll be okay. But Milwaukee and the Dodgers are leading in their divisions. And every time the Braves get to the playoffs, it don't matter how good they are in the season, they struggle seemingly, unless it's the year they won the series. But like last year, we did good and won the East, and then all of a sudden we play the Phillies and lose. And everybody's just like, how in the world did this happen? Because the Phillies got hot at the end of the season. So whoever is in the playoffs, whatever team is hot and on a roll at the end of September, 1st of October, generally have really good success through the playoffs. Not saying that they always make the series, but generally they have really good success. And at least they win their division, and they win their, go to the NLCS or the ALCS and then go to the series. But I think the Braves are going to be okay. I really do. If Max Fried will get back, and he's, of course, he is back, but he's still nursing that injury and just trying not to mess it up again. Spencer Strider, Bryce Elder's overperforming. I mean, he's doing exceptionally well too. So they got a good core group. Good coaches, and good management. So I mean, I know it seems like the Braves show right now, but they're my favorite team, and they are the talk of the National League. I mean, and the Major League Baseball, because they have the best record and they're doing exceptionally well.
I used a couple of years ago. I rode with Bradley and Derek up to a game, and you were playing the playoff game with the Braves and the Dodgers, and I was rooting for the Dodgers because I knew you was a Braves fan, so I figured I was going to root for the Dodgers.
Who won that game, by the way?
I don't know. I think it was some little team from Atlanta.
All I know is this year, and even
they won the World Series.
And even that day, I think I've got bursitis in the elbow from doing the Braves chop.
Now, you know that Deion Sanders brought that to Atlanta. It's a Florida State thing, and I tell you this, it's a Florida State thing. It originated at Florida State. Deion Sanders brought that to the Braves.
I don't know about that.
You know.
Chief Nakahama was already doing that in Atlanta Fulton County Stadium long before Deion come along. Nakahama wasn't even in there when Deion Sanders played for the Braves. And if you remember the old Fulton County Stadium, and that's another thing I was talking about with the young people at church, and was talking about the Braves, and they said, well, I went to the old stadium, but I'm not been in the new stadium yet. And I said, well, I remember going to their other stadium, to the Fulton County Stadium, and they said, what are you talking about? Well, you remember the old Fulton County Stadium was just a circular field, and I think it was in the left center field, was where Nakahama had the TP up, and he'd come out and beat on the drum and do his little dance and stuff when they would hit a home run, and it actually caught fire, and they had to rebuild that part of it. But that's when they won their first World Series in Atlanta. They won it in 95.
95.
And then in 96, they went to Turner Field, because that's the Olympics were over with. And they've been at Turner Field up until the last 5 years, 5 or 6 years, and now they're in Truist Park. But I've been to all 3 of them.
The Falcons used that field for many years also. It was one of those multi-use parks.
Mhm.
Great in theory, lousy in practice. And they played the Peach Bowl there. Tennessee played Indiana one year in that Peach Bowl, and that was probably one of the worst fields ever. I think Houston Thomas pretty much said it.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter. Let's talk about the minor league baseball, the Southern League. They're building new baseball stadiums for the Knoxville, for the Tennessee Smokies, and for the Chattanooga Lookouts. And I really don't see anything wrong with the current field that they use in Chattanooga. I don't know why they're building a new one.
Well, AT&T Field, by standards of modern baseball parks, is outdated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same situation even when they built AT&T Field there on the hill. Ingalls Stadium was in fair shape. I mean, it had a historical,
They used a
aura
couple
about
of films,
it.
I believe.
Yeah, 42 was filmed. Some was filmed there, and some other baseball movies.
The one about the baseball girls in World War II was one of them.
League of Their Own.
My mother, my sisters went and saw the Osmonds in 1973 at
Ingalls Stadium.
At Ingalls. And I sort of I know who the Osmonds were, but did I really care to go and see them screaming? I don't really care. But the fact of the matter is that the Tennessee Smokies is building these. They're in Sevierville, yeah. And I have trouble pronouncing that name. And now they're going to move it back to Knoxville, and they're building what used to be old. Okay. As a matter of fact, AT&T Field, the one that they use currently for the Lookouts, that used to be Kirkman High School.
Yeah.
In the 70s, because I remember that 60s and 70s until they cleared that out, and now it became AT&T Field.
Yeah, I actually got to watch years ago when I was a kid. I got to watch Michael Jordan play baseball with the Birmingham Barons against Chattanooga, and I was on the side of the fence. And he was in the batter's box. I mean, we're just 5 feet away from arguably one of the greatest players in the NBA. He wasn't too spectacular at baseball, but he gave it a go anyway. And I got to stand, and actually, see him. And I, of course, it was in the game, so I, couldn't talk to him or anything like that, and he wouldn't answer anything. But me as a kid, I was just awestruck. I am in the presence of again, arguably one of the best basketball players that has ever played the game. And that has always stuck with me. But made a lot of memories at the new park, AT&T, and I'm sure I'm going to make some more when they get this other one built down there closer to Finley Stadium.
I used to hear a story I had on ESPN about Bo Jackson. Bo does it all. Mm-hmm. Well, Bo had signed a baseball contract. He didn't want to go to play for Oakland or Tampa Bay for football, so he chose baseball, which he was really good at. And he signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. And they asked him, "What's the first thing you're going to do?" The Royals, excuse me. That's football. It's sometimes hard to separate the two. Anyway, the Royals, and he said, "What's the first thing you're going to do after you sign this contract?" He says, "I'm going to the batting cage and practice." And that's just what he did. Even in the field there, and you've seen the field at Kansas. See how they have this thing where the crown is that. It's rare that you'll have a player to knock one into that.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson did it on his first shot.
Oh yeah.
First shot, and he was very good. And he said if it weren't for him being injured, he said he would have been probably one of the best baseball players of all time.
Those that watched him, I mean, the younger generation today probably don't even have any idea who Bo Jackson is, but had he not had that hip injury, he would have probably went down as one of the greatest center fielders in the league ever. He had a rocket arm. He had power like no other, and this is before the steroid era. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was back then. It was just raw power, and he did the same thing on the football field. I mean, he'd run you over. Played at Auburn, played with Oakland Raiders. Of course, he had a good ball career. He played with, as far as baseball is concerned, he played with the Royals, he played with the White Sox, he played with the Angels there later in his career. So he played with quite a few teams and had some good stats. But unfortunately, that nagging hip injury kind of turned his fate a little bit, and he wasn't able to perform to the level he had before.
He was they say he was the reason why Bear Bryant retired, because he turned down to play at Alabama because his mother didn't want him in Tuscaloosa.
Mm-hmm.
That's as simple as that. So that's why he went to Auburn, and that's why because I remember he played against Alabama in '82, and he turned that game around, and Auburn beat Alabama. And after that, Bear Bryant said, "Well, hey, I had enough. I can't do it anymore." That tells you how interesting. Speaking of Bear Bryant, there was a story how when he was at Texas A&M, is that he didn't have a very good team. He was going up against SMU, and Forrest Gregg was one of the big linemen, NFL caliber linemen.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, one of the players on the other side, his same player wasn't that big, was not very small. So what he did was that before the whistle hit, he went and shot at that, and he knocked out Forrest Gregg with an uppercut. Well, of course, they hit him 15 yards for unsportsmanlike conduct. Sure. And he comes back there, and Bryant couldn't pull him out from the game because he didn't have enough players. They said, "What you do that for?" And I said, "Well, I figure if I could outplay him, I could intimidate him." And Bryant's answer was, "I like a lineman who thinks on his feet." That tells you, how that thing is. Anyway, with baseball, but it costs so much to build a new baseball stadium. I mean, you look at you think of 26 million, 27 million to build a new baseball stadium for the Chattanooga. Maybe they should just go back to Engle.
It'll end up being more than that, I think, when it's all said and done. But yes, I mean, according to today's standards, AT&T Field is outdated, but it's still a really good stadium. And I hate to see them move out of that and move into a new stadium and then demolish that one. Mm-hmm. I mean, because why would you want to demolish that? I mean, it's nice. It's still in good shape. I mean, needs a little bit of cosmetic work and maybe some paint mm-hmm. here and there. But as a whole, I mean, it's in really good shape. But they
usually for high school games or something like that.
Well, they could. Yeah, they could do They may even do some of the spring fling tournaments there. You never know.
But like I said, the baseball season's still a long ways to go. We still have the playoffs and then the World Series again, and you get to see it. Hopefully, we'll see if Atlanta or the other teams come out on top. When we come back, we'll talk about college football and some other miscellaneous items going around. As of course, college football just a few weeks away with the start in late August and early September on Labor Day. As you're watching here, the Bradley and Mike sports scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative Channel 18.
At Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter, we're committed to be better. Better prices, better vehicles, a better experience. Your Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter understands that you rely on us to provide you with the highest quality of used vehicles. With over 350 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. So what are you waiting for? Let us show you a better experience with the Jason Lewis Automotive family. Come visit us at Rankin Avenue here in Dunlap or on the web at dunlapsupercenter.com.
Come and see the beautiful Sequatchie Valley. And while you're here, visit the Dunlap Mercantile. We have a full line of hats from Resistol, Stetson, Charlie One Horse, American Hat Makers, GG Pip, Greeley hats from the TV show Yellowstone, and a full line of vintage hats. Make sure to check out our hat bar where we can clean, shape, and customize a hat just for you, right here at the Dunlap Mercantile.
need a bank that you can depend on. Here at Citizens Tri-County Bank, we have the most dependable staff that you will ever meet. Call in, you will not get an automated attendant, you'll get a person. But on the other side, we have all the technology that anyone would need, from apps to online banking to bill pay. So please come and grow with us as we're about to celebrate our 50th year. We are the only community bank you will ever need.
Okay, we're back, and of course, this will be our third segment of this show, and of course, we're going to discuss college football and other miscellaneous items that may be of interest to you. And of course, college football is scheduled to start up in about late August with a number of games. Vanderbilt will host Hawaii from week 0, if you use any term there. And of course, that's a nice. Of course, Hawaii last year hosted Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt won that game. That wasn't a bad trip for them.
No.
And of course, on Labor Day weekend, of course, Tennessee and Virginia will face off in Nashville. It's so-called neutral site, but yeah, that's a neutral site. Yeah. If you believe that, then I have a bridge to sell you. Anyway, college football, of course, a number of rule changes have been enforced. For the first time since 1968, the clock will not stop after a first down. So basically, you're going to have to hurry it up and get it going, especially if the game's getting down to the wire. College football polls are out. Coaches poll has Tennessee ranked number 10. AP has Tennessee ranked number 12. Georgia ranked number 1 in both polls. TCU is 16th in both polls, the runner-up, and I'm surprised they're even ranked.
Yeah.
After what I'm seeing right now. Apparently, the Pac-12 is history. No more Pac-12. It's now the Pac-4.
Down to Pac-4 now.
Pac-4, and may not even be that, as there are maybe a couple of teams who may be heading to the ACC. They actually had a vote, and I think 2 teams that were considered to be ACC teams were basically voted down. Basically, you're not going to get into the ACC. They may go to the AAC or some other thing, but the Pac-12 is history. And really, in a way, it's sort of like the Southwest Conference, the old Southwest Conference. I don't know if you remember this, Bradley, but what happened was in 1990, Arkansas joined the SEC, and that was the only non-Texas member of that league. And it got into what it was every man for themselves. Texas and Texas A&M were, or the big dogs, so they kept more of the money, while other teams like SMU, Baylor, TCU, Rice, well, they don't draw as much crowds, therefore they don't keep the money. And so as a result, because of lack of really wanting to get teams in there to expand their football base, it broke up in 1996, and the Southwest Conference was no more. And of course, there's again talk about expansion with the SEC. You're looking at a number of teams again talking about Florida State maybe leaving next year, the ACC, maybe going to the Southeastern Conference. Steve Spurrier says that's fine with him.
I'm sure it would be.
Yeah, it sure would be him. But that's that sort of thing. And the thing is that with these conference expansions and the realignments and that sort of thing, will the NCAA start to really get involved in that seriously, Bradley?
The only way the NCAA would get involved is if it starts hurting their pocketbook. I hate to be that way, but that's the God's honest truth. I mean, as long as those schools, regardless of what conference they are in, because you look, the schools that are moving, the schools that are going to the bigger, different conference or are leaving, they have a huge market.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of money goes back into the NCAA because of their, fan base and the market that brings with them. It's not just the team. It's it's the logos, the colors, the all across the country, and as long as the NCAA is still making their dollar, they're going to let schools do whatever they want to do. Because let's be honest, I mean, you got the Stanfords and you got the Arizonas, Arizona States, and things like that. The small schools, the Vanderbilts, and things like that. That yes, they if they're a fan of that school, they're the best thing ever was. But in reality, those smaller schools, Tulane, they're not going to be able to influence the NCAA to come in and say, hey, look, we don't want to be left out, and the NCAA can't go back on the conferences and force them to either get rid of someone or take away. And if that starts happening, what you're going to have the SEC is probably just going to branch off and be its own little thing. And the Big 12 and the Big 10 and all, there's going to be their own. I mean, because we got enough teams in our area that in our region that if the SEC were to be like, hey, you know what, NCAA, we just don't really need you anymore. We'll do our own thing.
Well, but there was talk about that among the Power 5 conference forming their own little organization, that sort of thing. But the thing about it is that you look at the smaller, you look at the small schools, the FCS, like Chattanooga, that sort of thing. Where do they go into that? The SEC is going to have to figure out where they're going to go to 8 or 9 game conference schedules, and they kicked that down the lane for a year, and they say, well, next year there's not going to have East versus West. You can have the top two going to play each other, and that sort of. It would be interesting to be Alabama and Tennessee or Georgia and Tennessee going at each other. But the thing about it is that how far do you let it go? I mean, you the Big Ten picking up Southern Cal and UCLA and then Oregon and Washington. I mean, really, come on, they don't fit.
That made about as much sense as in basketball when San Diego State, there for a couple of years, joined the Big East. They're in the conference with UConn and all those, and Syracuse, and they're completely the other side of the country. Mm-hmm. So, again, geographically speaking, it makes absolutely no sense. But for the conference as a whole and for the NCAA as a whole, you talk about some money that's going to flow into those programs, flow into those conferences, and back to the NCAA. It's all about the dollar right now. From them, it's a business perspective.
It's all about business,
and it's always been, regardless of the conference, the Power 5 or whatever you have, the smaller schools that are not part of that are part of the American Conference or the AAC, or Mountain West, or the Sun Belt. Those small conferences and the smaller schools like MTSU and places like that, they've always missed out.
Yeah,
they don't get their fair cut, and that's no fault to them. It's just the fact that they don't have the market around the team and the school that say. You compare MTSU and University of Tennessee. There's no comparison.
They're both fine schools.
They're both great schools, but as far as the marketability, Tennessee, by and large, will take every category away because of the fact that they have a larger base and a larger market following the team, and that's just unfortunate for the smaller schools. And I don't know how the NCAA could step in and do anything about that. Because every recruit has a chance to go anywhere he wants to go. They'll offer scholarship. So if you've got a 5-star recruit that wants to play for Memphis or Tulane or Georgia Tech or even Tennessee, they can sign with who they want to sign with.
Yeah.
And you can't blame the college and you can't blame the conference because of the marketability that those kids bring in. You can't blame them. You can't punish them for it.
Well, the story of how Tennessee and Chattanooga used to play each other every year, through the 40s to the 60s, and then they had a hiatus. And they had Nealon, who was the head coach and athletic director. He would always schedule Chattanooga just before Alabama because they always ran the same formation as Alabama. So basically, it was a tune-up game for them. And he heard Alabama was changing its formation. They're going from Notre Dame box to T formation. And he contacts Scrappy Moore, who's the head coach at Chattanooga. And he says, what formation are you running? I said, well, I'm running the Notre Dame box. And he said, well, Alabama is going to the T formation. And I said, you play us every year. When we play you, does that make your budget? I said, yes, sir. And he said, and that's all he had to say. And what happened? Chattanooga changed his formation to T formation. You said this. It's all about money.
Money talks.
Money talks.
It sure
you
does.
look at teams. You're like Army was supposed to play Tennessee last year. Well, they switched it for Akron, and of course, it cost Tennessee $500,000 because they had to pay Army the money to get out of that. And Army felt say, hey, like you're going into a tough competitive team to an easy. Mm-hmm. That's the way it was. You look at you look at the smaller schools. For years Tennessee would play an in-state rival, except Vanderbilt and Memphis. Then they start playing Chattanooga and Austin Peay. And that's what they're going to play this year. And then Middle Tennessee State, then Chattanooga again. They'll play Chattanooga again next year. And you look at this. The TCU. You remember the TCU coach saying, "Well, they can schedule all these, and we can't do it, and all that." And Georgia just absolutely annihilated them.
Right before that game, that TCU coach said in a press conference, he said, "We in the Big 12 don't have the luxuries of playing the Woffords and the Samfords and and the Mercers at the last end of the last game of the season." And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, but all three of those teams finished second or third in the Big 12. Because that's just the way it is. The competition's not there.
The Vols played Tennessee Martin last year. They were 14th in FCS. So basically that was a top 25 team that Tennessee was playing against. Of course, Tennessee didn't have any trouble with them at all, the Skyhawks and that sort of thing.
They also don't play the caliber of teams that we play week in and week out in our own conference schedule. So that's really comparing apples to oranges here, is to compare TCU's schedule and the schedule of an SEC team, regardless of who it is, whether they're bottom feeder or whether they're on the top.
Mm-hmm.
The SEC schedule conference is still going to be harder than their whole season combined.
Sure. You look at that.
And I think Georgia's seen that. I think Georgia heard that, and I think the message was loud and clear. And I also think that the whooping they put on them, the possum whomping that they put on them last year in the national championship game, I think the message was then heard by TCU, saying, "Hey, this is what we're about."
You look at Tennessee. They got more natural rivalries than any other team in the SEC. You got Vanderbilt, you got Kentucky, you got Alabama, you got Florida, you got Georgia, you got all those. That's a murderer's row.
Well, success gets you rivals.
Mm-hmm.
In Tennessee, they've had a rough patch, the past several years with the coaching changes and things like that. But hey, in the 90s and the early 2000s, Tennessee was a premier school, and that's just in my lifetime. Now, prior to that, they've got a history.
Yeah.
They had some good runs and made won the Natty a couple times. So hey. You go with, again, the marketability of the school. Mm-hmm. If you're successful, you're going to have natural rivals.
Of course.
And I think our rival, still on paper, our number one rival is Alabama.
Yeah.
But, you ask any Tennessee fan, and they cannot stand Florida.
No.
Right now, they can't stand Georgia. Why? Because Georgia's number one of the best teams in the nation, and has been for the past couple of years, or even before. And Tennessee always, Tennessee fans despise Vanderbilt because that's our in-state rival. We despise Kentucky because it's Kentucky. There's no reason. Why? I asked a guy one time, I said, "Why do you dislike this team so much?" And he said, and it was Kentucky, and I said, "Why do you dislike Kentucky so much?"
Yeah.
Given that Florida and Alabama and those teams Georgia should be bigger rivals for us. And he said, "I just don't like Kentucky."
The thing about it is with Chris Lofton.
Mm-hmm.
He got turned down by both Louisville and Kentucky. They said he wasn't major college basketball caliber. And you know what happened? He goes to Tennessee and he shows them. I was reading the book about Ray Mears, and he's Bernard King. He went to Lexington to play Kentucky. Lost. His first game as a freshman. There as a freshman. And he said afterwards somebody threw a lit cigarette at his head. And they had to basically restrain him from going up there. He said he vowed he would never lose to Kentucky again. And he never did. He said, because I hate Kentucky. I hate Kentucky more than anything else. At Bernard King. But the thing about it is that in 1998 when Tennessee went and played Vanderbilt at Nashville, this was Tennessee going to win the national championship. There was maybe about 500 Vanderbilt fans in the crowd of 41,000 Tennessee fans. And the Vanderbilt player said, "Well, it looks like a home game for Tennessee," and he asked, the referee said, "Can we call the pitch first?" The referee says, "No." And that's of course, Tennessee just annihilated Vanderbilt that year.
This is not a shot at Vanderbilt. I mean,
Yeah.
but the fact that there are so many Tennessee fans here in the state of Tennessee, even in Nashville, even though Vandy's got their foot in the door there, and that's where they are, but there are still so many Tennessee fans in Nashville. And when a visiting team can go to an opposing team's stadium and what they call checker it.
Checker it. Yeah.
We checkered Vandy 2 seasons.
2 seasons
that we played there.
Yeah.
And I think Alabama has kind of seen what was going on, because this year, because of the success that Tennessee had last year and beating them in the last minute on the field goal, Alabama, I think, is only selling like 5,000 tickets.
Yeah.
5,000 tickets to Tennessee fans.
Yeah.
That's to their school.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can still buy a ticket and go. But
fans will pay a pretty penny.
They're wanting to make sure that they don't get that noise.
Checkerboard,
They don't want to get that noise down there in Tuscaloosa that
Yeah.
they had to deal with in Neyland last
sure.
year. Yeah.
You know, they had a story going on one time. They said some Vanderbilt fans on the campus of Vanderbilt had put on the concrete on sidewalks says, "This is not Big Orange country. This is the Tennessee game." And they said 24 hours later, somebody had painted it over in orange and white, and it says, "This is Big Orange territory." Somebody, so it tells you how it goes around here.
I always want to beat Vandy. I always want to beat Alabama, and I always want to beat Georgia, and I always want to beat Kentucky. My 2 teams in the SEC that I despise personally, some of my friends are big fans, and I'm sorry I might offend you when I say this, but the Florida Gators is right there at the top. I can't stand them, and you can thank Steve Spurrier for that.
Yeah.
And the second team that I can't stand is LSU, and you can just thank some of their fans for that. As having one of the most obnoxious fan bases.
Well, wait till you play Texas. Then you'll know how obnoxious
there are some good people that are LSU fans. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They're dear friends of mine, and I think the world of them. Mm-hmm. But I can't cheer for their team. And I those 2 teams right there are my
They probably
least
feel the
favorite.
same way about Tennessee.
I mean, just tell you how bad that is. Florida and LSU rank right up there with the Notre Dames and the Ohio States with me. Because I just can't stand it.
You know, in Alabama, there are a lot of people who are still mad at Notre Dame and Michigan State for tying. And Bear Bryant said, "Hey, ties like kissing your sister," and that denied Alabama a national championship because they finished perfect in a tie. Because what happened was Notre Dame didn't go to bowls then, and Michigan State had a no repeat rule in the Rose Bowl, which meant Michigan State couldn't go to the Rose Bowl because at that time until about 1975. Big Ten would not send any other team to any other bowl, and it took Michigan's Joe Schembecker to change that, and that sort of thing, and that was the big thing. And I said, then you would still see bumper stickers or whatever around saying Bama's really the number 1 team, because that sort of thing. And it didn't until the 1970s when they started playing Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl that I think things started to ease a little bit. But this sort of thing is that the SEC expanded it into Texas and into Missouri for the Midwest to get the players in the Midwest. They had some good players in the Midwest, but they wanted to get more. And the Big Ten wants to go coast to coast, which really doesn't make any sense to me. But geographically, it's
if they've got the budget to fly those kids out to the West Coast like that, let them spend the money. If they got it, spend it. But it just don't make sense at all.
Absolutely. Okay, some final thoughts here as we close out this program. Of course, we know that high school football is set to begin regular season week 1, Bledsoe, Sequatchie County, and of course we urge fans to show up for that game in force to sell out the stadium both sides. Bledsoe and Sequatchie County, the border rivalry, another edition since 1928. Of course, we like everybody to go to the game. If you're not, well, you can listen to it here on WAT AM 1110 Pikeville, Tennessee. And of course, college football set to start in a few weeks, and of course, fall will soon be here for us all. So we'll see you in 2 weeks as we do another program. And of course, Bledsoe County and Sequatchie County Friday night. at Dunlap, Tennessee. We'll have the broadcast of you for that game on WAT. Pre-game at 6:40 p.m. Kickoff at 7 p.m. They'll have a tailgate. Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative will have a tailgate before the game begins, so we'll stop by and say hello and friendly. And of course, they'll probably give out a lot of T-shirts. I know they do every year. And of course, we urge fans to wear, if you're for Bledsoe, you're blue. If you're Sequatchie County, you're purple. And we hope that you all show good sportsmanship and basically, go home hopefully with good cheer, as Bledsoe County will take on Sequatchie County. So for myself, Mike Smith, and for Bradley Hargis, we bid you farewell. We'll see you in 2 weeks, as we'll have another edition of the Bradley and Mike Sports Scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative, Channel 18.
3 things before we go, Mike, I'm going to leave you with.
Okay.
Go Braves, go Warriors, and go Big Orange.
Yeah, you got that right. So this'll do it. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Brought to you by Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative in the Sequatchie Valley.